Good evening, everyone. This is the first ATESOL podcast that we're having. As it's the first one, we're all feeling quite nervous, and it's a bit of a momentous week this week. It's Harmony Week. So that's kind of the impetus for our first ATESOL meeting, for our first ATESOL podcast. Sorry, we have lots of meetings. With me tonight, I've got Cindy Valdez and I have V Nguyen. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, it's Cindy here. I'm currently president of ATESOL New South Wales. Also one of the ELD education leaders for the Department of Education, and I have been in this space in the ELD space for I just realised, over 25 years. So it's a very long time to be, and I'm so happy that this podcast is happening actually. So glad to be here. Thanks.
Hi, my name is V. I'm currently at William Stimson Public School. I'm currently the EALD coordinator.
Awesome. And yep, my name is Nathan. I'm currently working at Fairfield Public School in a well-being capacity, working alongside our refugee students, our EELD students, helping them engage in their learning. But before we begin our podcast, I would like to acknowledge the traditional lands from which we are meeting on. For me, that's the Cabral clan of the Darug Nation. I'd like to acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging who are viewing this podcast, and also acknowledge that this land that we're situated on was never ceded. Okay, so we might jump right into our questions. So it being Harmony Week, we'll talk about our identity, our connection to country, our connection to Australia. I'll just throw this question out there to both of you. Would you describe yourself and your family as Australian?
I'll start with that one, B. That's actually a very hard question, and it's actually
Mhm.
come at a good time because my family and I were chatting on the weekend, and we've been here for 33 years now. So this is our 34th year actually come May. And we talked about, you know, are we Australians? Are we Filipino? And I'm actually going back to the Philippines in April, and the topic of language and how I speak Filipino came up. Because for me, I identify as now Australian because
Mhm.
I've now been here, like I said, 33 years. But a huge part of me, as I'm getting older, I'm finding that actually it's sort of like I don't know if it's a calling or it's sort of calling me to come home. And the trip's going to be an extra special one because I'll be working in classrooms when I visit there and see my family and friends that I grew up with. So it felt like home talking about it. It felt like, hey, this is pretty cool. I'm going back home, and that moment I feel very Filipino, like just thinking of the language, the food that I'm about to eat and indulge in, the activities that we're going to be doing, which then for me, I think being am I Australian, do I identify as Australian or Filipino? I think for the common theme there is family and friends for myself.
Yep.
And same with my family. I think they feel that they're very much more Australian, but when you go home and visit your homeland, your country of birth, I think you have a different, you feel like you're there. Like so it's nice to feel like I still belong
Yep.
in the
To both
Philippines.
communities. Yeah. I have
Yeah.
a question for you because you brought up language before V jumps in, but
Hmm.
this always interests me for people who speak multiple languages. What language do you dream in?
Oh my goodness, that's a very good question. To answer that, I think I actually speak Filipino because I did dream about my mom and dad, and we
Yep.
were having dinner in this dream, and we were speaking in Filipino.
Yeah.
So that's a really good question there, Nathan. But in general, I think it's in English.
Yep. Okay.
But yeah, but maybe if I'm with Filipino, with, especially mom and dad or relatives, it is in Filipino actually. Funnily enough.
Interesting. How about you, V?
Um, it is a very hard question. I myself do identify as an Australian. However, from what Cindy just said, just reflecting a bit, I feel like I am Vietnamese Australian. I feel like I haven't lost my Vietnamese identity. However, I can't say the same for my family, especially my mum. So we've been here more than 20 years. Sorry, that's just my dog in the background.
That's
We've
okay.
we've been here
Sure.
for 20 years, and I think thinking about, because you guys are talking about language, she hasn't had the opportunity to acquire English as a secondary language as well, because Vietnamese is what she it's her first language. So I don't think it's because of that she doesn't see herself as Australian, if
Yep.
that makes sense. She does participate in work and other things, but if you were to tell her, I know, can we go have a barbecue on Australia Day, she'll probably say no.
Yep.
You know, but whereas myself, you know, I'll go out with some friends, some mates. So yeah, so I do identify as Australian.
And I'm sure
but-
you're just barbecuing on Australia Day as well, right?
The
Just barbecuing.
Barbie. Yes.
Yeah, so why do you think language would play so much into identifying as Australian then?
Oh, that's a good question.
in my opinion, so I've heard someone say this to me at a workshop one time. Language is very powerful. It allows you to participate in that culture and that society. If
Yes.
you don't have, let's say, a strong, let's say, if you don't have a strong English language, it's very hard for you to participate, to enjoy, and to appreciate the culture that's around you.
Yep. I feel like you're saying like the overlap between language and culture. It's almost like if you're looking at it as a Venn diagram, like the overlap is so significant. And if you aren't speaking the language or you aren't able to learn the language, it would hinder your kind of identity as that culture. Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
100%.
I guess that leads us into our next question. Would you describe yourselves as being typically Australian?
What makes a typical, what's a typical Australian is my question.
I think V's got a
and that,
joke there. I think he'd probably want to make a joke about having a mullet or something.
I
Bit of a mullet.
well, I can't say the same for myself.
I'll make the joke for him because I know he's holding it in. But yeah, what makes a typical Australian?
A typical Australian, for myself, I think, you know, I'm looking at my own personality and the culture I was brought in. So, you know, in my culture, for example, in the Philippines, I mean, having gone to school there since, you know, till year 8, I was year 8. I was year 9 when I traveled here, migrated, sorry. And I remember in absolute culture shock, hearing the girls, I went to a girls' school, you know, answering back to the teachers or, you know, giving their reasons or arguing their points, debating, like, because that is not, you know, that's not what happened to me at school in the Philippines, because culturally, because I'm a very, as you both know, a very outspoken, I'm assertive, I can, you know, and to have grown up over there and everything is silenced, you know, like you don't speak until you're spoken to or you have to put your hand up. So that was really hard for me. So, but I loved it when I came here because I thought, oh, the kids here are given a voice, right? Because I thought, so that was for me was typical Australian for me is that you're able to express yourself and not, you know, and do that in a respectful manner. But I'm just saying it's lovely to see that kids are encouraged to speak their mind and to reason. And another thing that typical Australian for me, I find that they're very relaxed. I'm not a very relaxed person. As you both know, I could get a bit high strung and but having lived here for so long now, I've learned to just chill. Like, and I find myself saying that to people now, just chill.
Have you though? Really?
I have chilled.
Okay, cool.
What did you say that? You guys have been working with me for so long. I
Yeah.
believe I've chilled. Yeah, so I think that the chilledness, like the relaxed, is typical Australian for me, and that, yeah, that's what's for me. V?
Yeah, I'm just going to build on what Sin said. I guess we are very laid back. We're quite chill. We don't take things seriously.
Mhm.
Unlike Cindy, she takes everything, seriously.
Don't.
I do really enjoy just that simple Vegemite and toast, coffee, and for me, yeah, it's just nice.
There's food.
Yeah,
Anything with food, right, Veg?
yes, that's right. And I love
That's-
my meringues as well.
Your meringues, your Vegemite, your food. So the typical Australian is quite unhealthy.
Yes.
I would agree with that.
Nathan, what's typical Australian for you?
Look, I don't look. It's an interesting question because, like, honestly, like the right answer is there's no typical Australian. Is what I, kind of believe. For me, I've always kind of grown up in quite multicultural, quite diverse areas.
Mhm.
So for me, the typical Australian experience, at least from my perspective, is, having lots of friends from different countries,
Nice.
perhaps first generation, second generation migrants, refugees. Um, yeah, for me, but for my extended family who may not have experienced that, like obviously they're going to have a very different typical Australian view. Yeah, and I guess the typical Australian has kind of changed and progressed over time. I mean, you
Yes.
look at our immigration policy changing, you look at our borders closing during COVID. Yeah, there's no real typical Australian to me.
Good.
Yeah. All
Interesting.
right. So our last question is,
Yes.
what does being Australian mean to both of you?
Oh,
Hmm.
B.
Starting the Pledge of Allegiance every day.
B, you start this one and I'll.
What does
Being
being Australian
Australian mean to
mean
you?
to me? I think being given the opportunity, basically having a fair go. Let's say, yeah, that's a very hard question.
You mean
It
by a
is a
fair
hard
go?
question.
I guess at the same time, I fully participate in the Australian way of life, but at the same time, I haven't lost my Vietnamese identity.
Mm-hmm. So you,
Like both my, let's say, my Australian way of life and my Vietnamese life, it again it flows quite well.
mhm.
Like it complements, and I guess being Australian, I guess we come from, there are a lot of people that are from diverse backgrounds and stuff as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
how to answer that.
good
So
point.
is
No,
being
that's good.
Australian kind of being allowed to have those multiple identities and them like coexisting and not competing with each other, but just
Mm.
allowing them to exist within you.
No, that's great. So I think for myself, just to add on to what you both said, being Australian. So having experienced racism myself, I have experienced that from, unfortunately, in a school setting. But what I liked about that is the fact that at the same time, I did have amazing high school teachers that were so accepting of me and had always, included me in the, in the classroom. Like they've never, dumb things down for me. If anything, I had a wonderful high school teacher in English, Miss G. I'm going to call her Miss G again. And it's a tribute to her because she always knew how to push us along. And when I say us, there's a migrant group that's in year 11, and she knew how to sort of push us and challenge us. And so for me, that was such a great model of someone who knew how to make her students feel they belong in the classroom, or that they're included and they're not ever made feel less off. If anything, she really encouraged us to read widely, and if we didn't understand anything, she was always there to support us in that sort of journey. So I think Australia for me, although there are some sad or bad moments, there's also good. I think it's such a nice, I don't know, it's just being allowed to be who you are, I suppose, and that you're enough, and you're like what you both were saying. Like I think I know, yeah, you have this sort of freedom. You're not made to feel that you can't be, but the opposite. It's like you can be, it's like the sky's the limit. You can actually be anything that you'd want, any opportunity that you take up, it's there for you to take up, I suppose. So yeah, I think that's what being Australian is for me.
It's interesting that you finish on that note, because really that's why, you know, I'm a teacher, is, you know, the sky's the limit for our kids.
Mm-hmm.
Allow them those opportunities to kind of experience that success. Allow them those opportunities to, you know, have their own personal cultures, their own family cultures, their own family histories, which don't compete against, you know, their Australian identity.
Yeah, I love that. Even tonight, just hearing the three of us sharing stories, you know, how our narratives just really tie us all together. And to me, that's being Australian, really, that you are allowed to have a voice to tell your stories and your narratives, and, you know, to connect with people. And so, yeah, it's been great.
Awesome. Well, that about wraps it up for our first ATESOL podcast. It wasn't the dumpster fire that we all assumed it would be, I hope. And yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, Sunny,
Yeah.
and thank you,
So
V.
Having us.
thanks, Nathan. Thanks, V. And happy Harmony Week.
Happy
Happy
Harmony Week.